I never imagined that the two women I trusted most would become the reason my daughter almost lost her future. My name is Emily, and for 15 years I worked 2 jobs so my daughter Lily would never have to struggle the way I did. Every extra shift, every missed vacation, every old car I kept driving instead of replacing, it all had one purpose: her college fund. I wasn't rich, I wasn't lucky, I was simply determined. When my husband passed away 8 years ago, people told me I'd never manage alone. But every month, no matter how difficult things became, I transferred money into a special savings account. It wasn't for me. It was for Lily's dreams. She wanted to become a doctor. Every time she talked about helping children, her eyes sparkled in a way that reminded me why I refused to give up. But family. Family has a strange way of teaching you the hardest lessons. My mother always favored my younger sister, Claire. If there were 2 slices of cake, Claire got the bigger one. If there was one opportunity, somehow it always belonged to her. Growing up, I learned to stay quiet. I convinced myself that one day things would change. They never did. Claire had expensive tastes but hated responsibility. She jumped from one business idea to another, always expecting someone else to rescue her when everything fell apart. Usually that someone was Mom, and if Mom couldn't fix it, they expected me to. "Emily," Mom would say with that familiar voice, "you're the responsible one. Claire just needs a little help." A little help became thousands of dollars over the years. Eventually, I stopped saying yes. That's when they started calling me selfish. I ignored it, because my focus was Lily. Everything felt perfect the day Lily received her acceptance letter to one of the country's best universities. She cried. I cried. We hugged in our tiny kitchen while celebrating with cheap pizza because neither of us cared about fancy dinners. "We did it, Mom," she whispered. "No," I smiled through my tears. "You did it." I believed every sacrifice had finally paid off. But what I didn't know that day was that someone had already been planning to steal everything we had worked for. 2 weeks later, I logged into the college savings account to prepare the tuition payment. The balance showed $213.47. I refreshed the screen. Again and again. My hands started shaking. Over $200,000 gone. I couldn't breathe. At first I thought there had to be a mistake, until I opened the transaction history. Every dollar had been transferred out only 3 days earlier, to an account I had never seen before. That was the moment my entire world began to fall apart. The bank immediately launched an investigation. I spent hours answering questions, signing paperwork, and praying they would tell me it was a technical error. Instead, they gave me an answer that hurt even more. "There was no hacking," the investigator said gently. "The transfer was authorized." I stared at him. "That's impossible." He looked uncomfortable. "Someone had legal access." Legal access? Then I remembered something that happened months earlier. After my husband died, my mother insisted I add her name as an emergency contact for financial matters. "It's only in case something happens to you," she'd said. I trusted her. I signed the papers without reading every detail. That single decision changed everything. The bank discovered my mother had quietly upgraded her access during a later appointment, and shortly before the money disappeared, she had visited the branch. But she hadn't gone alone. Claire had been with her. I drove straight to my mother's house. She opened the door with a smile that disappeared the second she saw my face. "Where's the money?" She looked away. "I don't know what you're talking about." Claire walked into the hallway, carrying a designer handbag I had never seen before. Suddenly, everything made sense. "You took Lily's college fund." Claire crossed her arms. "It was a loan." "A loan?" I shouted. "You never asked." Mom sighed dramatically. Claire was desperate. "So you stole from your granddaughter?" "We're family," she answered. "You'll earn more." Those words shattered something inside me. Lily wasn't crying because of money. She was crying because she believed her future had disappeared. Watching my daughter quietly pack away university brochures nearly broke me. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered one evening. "I'll forget about medical school." That sentence changed me forever. I stopped begging, stopped arguing, stopped expecting an apology. Instead, I hired the best attorney I could afford. When he finished reviewing every document, he looked at me and smiled. They made one enormous mistake. What mistake? They believed family would stop you from using the law. For the first time in weeks, I smiled too, because they had no idea what was coming. The investigation uncovered everything. The transfers, the forged authorizations, the hidden financial records. My attorney discovered that Claire had already spent much of the money on luxury vacations, expensive furniture, and a down payment for a boutique she proudly called her fresh start. She thought the money was untouchable. She was wrong. The court ruled that every stolen dollar had to be repaid. Not only that, because the funds had been taken through deception and abuse of financial authority, the judge approved additional financial penalties. Claire's boutique was forced to close before it even opened. The luxury car she proudly posted online was repossessed. Savings accounts were frozen. Even my mother's house had to be refinanced to satisfy the judgment. Neither of them expected the consequences to reach that far. One afternoon, my mother appeared at my front door. She looked older than I remembered. "Emily, please." I waited silently. "We've lost everything." I nodded slowly. "So did Lily." Tears filled her eyes. "I never wanted this, but you signed the papers." She couldn't answer. A week later, Claire called me over 20 times. I never answered. Eventually, she left one voicemail. "I didn't think you'd actually fight back." That sentence stayed with me, because that was exactly the problem. They believed kindness meant weakness. They confused patience with permission. They thought I would sacrifice my daughter's future just to keep the family comfortable. They were wrong. Months later, the recovered money finally returned to Lily's account. When she received the confirmation letter, she hugged me tighter than ever before. "You saved my dream." I smiled. "No, I protected it." Last month, I watched Lily walk across her university campus wearing a white lab coat during her first medical training program. As she turned around and waved at me, I realized something important. Real family protects your future. They don't steal it. Forgiveness is a choice. Trust is earned. And sometimes the strongest revenge isn't shouting, arguing, or wishing for someone else's downfall. Sometimes the strongest revenge is letting the truth speak through the law. Because when people cross the line and believe they'll never face consequences, justice has a quiet way of reminding them that every choice leaves a mark. And while my mother and sister lost the life they built on betrayal, my daughter gained the